تقرير ماجد الكيلاني, and welcome our guest, Michael Binyon OBE. And you're the chief leader writer of the Times.
That's right, yes.
Yeah,
I'm no longer full-time, but I certainly have to go in on Sundays and holidays and give the views of the paper.
Beautiful. Well, you're going to South Africa tonight. Thank you very much for coming. On the Scotland question, and are they a bit emboldened? Because I wasn't expecting her to talk about the another referendum. Are they emboldened by what's happening in Catalonia?
Well, yes and no. I think to one extent they are encouraged that the Catalans have really come out and made their wishes clear, and that the local Prime Minister is challenging Madrid.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's quite a bad signal that much of the local business is leaving and going to Madrid. And if the same thing happened in Scotland, we might see...
London,
yeah, we would see a similar example of business moving out of Scotland.
But she had a cheap shot at our headmistress, Theresa May.
Well,
with
yes.
With the striptease. On the phone-in program with May, she was unwise to refuse to answer the question on which way she will vote, because you have the cabinet who actually were voting for Remain are now committed to law.
Well, this makes it extremely difficult for her. Everybody knows she voted for Remain, although perhaps not very enthusiastically. Now she has to push through the opposite policy, but she has a cabinet and a government completely divided.
On that one.
They don't know, they're more or less agreed they're going to go ahead with leaving the European Union, but how and on what terms and how much they should remain in the market, unclear.
I want to show you something. The Chancellor, Philip Hammond, because he was called before the Treasury Select Committee Wednesday in the Commons. Downing Street briefing that day, when they briefed us, they actually accused the Times, of playing it up really out of proportion, and the headline doesn't really justify why he said that.
Well, you know, when the government is in trouble, they always blame the press. It's much easier to, and even if we get it right, what they say is it was out of context.
Out of context,
The words may be true, but you should see the whole situation. Mm-hmm. So I don't really take any.
I mean, obviously, you know, I mean, it's his own words.
Yes.
And so on, and he. I mean, even his people actually, when briefing it, and they said, "Oh, that's not the agreement he had with the family." I mean, you know, you are a senior. One of the senior.
This happens all the time, and it is particularly now when you've got a government that really is fighting amongst itself, when you've got ministers against ministers, when the whole policy is unclear. The newspapers are very much asking questions: what do you think? What do you want? What are you doing? And they have no answer, and as a result they tend to attack the press and say, you know, you're not giving us a chance. Well, we're giving them every chance.
But it's really funny, because Downing Street briefing, when they brief us, we are press. And then your people from the Times is standing with us there, and obviously we're just listening to the briefing. But is it actually wise? Because you know, you and I used to be foreign correspondents. But is it actually wise that the Chancellor does not actually show the European Union that we really have Plan B for no deal, i.e., structure on the borders, for example, for the customs, that we have people ready for people's movement and so on. Unless you see that on the ground, they're not going to, they can call our bluff.
Well, that's the same issue. It's the same argument about whether you should have nuclear missiles. If you have nuclear missiles that don't work, nobody takes them seriously. If you have nuclear missiles that people know could hit you, then they may take you seriously. And that is the same argument, except that the Chancellor says, we're not going to spend all the money now preparing for all this, because that would be a huge waste of money if we get a deal, if we get an agreement. Of course, they're telling the Europeans, we have plans if things don't work, but they're not going to reveal what those plans are, and they're certainly not going to spend money on those plans.
So it's a missile without a fuse.
Yes.
Good time to take a break here. We'll take a break and then come back to you. استراحة قصيرة نعود بعدها إليكم. Now back to Michael Binyon. As you can see, have you seen that Dove ad or the
I've seen reports of it. I haven't seen the whole advertisement itself, but I've seen bits of it, the bits that are causing a row. It's one of several advertisements in this genre, and in fact it's not that offensive at all.
Well, the black model herself said it's quite ingenious, imaginative.
Yes, of course. I mean, I've heard about other scandals, for example, in Japan, where they were advertising a soap and they had a black model who washed herself in soap and she became white.
Well, that is...
I mean, that's pure racist. But this is not racist. This is... But still, there are so many people looking to take offence now, wanting to take offence.
I find it, as a journalist, very, very, very disturbing.
It's very annoying.
This sort of ban this, I don't like this. I mean, who is the judge?
Oh, it's all over the place. It's no platforming in universities. If you don't like somebody's views, you don't let them speak. Instead of listening to them and saying, I disagree, you just say, they have fascist views, they cannot speak.
I was pelted with eggs.
Oh, really?
in one of the London universities. But you know, where is it going to stop?
It's hard to say. I mean, there are so many issues where extremists are determined to push it right to the limit. The problem is that many issues, the battle has been won on equality for women,
equality, etc.
All that sort of thing, human rights and things like this. So it's difficult for those who want to be in the forefront to know what to fight against.
I see.
So they're always looking for a new issue. And now
we're looking for a cause.
We're getting onto the gender issue now, which they're pushing to the limit, which is absurd.
I mean, we're going to have the next census was 60 million. So if actually they go ahead with this plan, we don't know 60 million what?
We don't know whether they're male or female. Well, of course, most people won't pay any attention to this. But there will be a minority who will say, I'm not going to tell you if I'm male or female. Now, that does make it very difficult to plan provision for example, schools, medicines, all sorts of things. You need to know how many women there are and how many men and roughly what age groups.
And you and I traveled a lot around the world for our work. If the chap wins the judicial review and forces the Home Office to remove the gender from the passport, what are we going to do when we go to countries where they demand this? Are we going to
Exactly. I mean, if you don't put it in your passport, presumably, then people say, well, you don't exist. You're neither male nor female, you don't exist, and therefore you can't enter the country. I don't think it'll come to that. I think anybody who wants to travel knows that unless you put down your own gender in the passport, you're not going to be able to travel.
Well, but I don't know. It is actually the Supreme Court sometimes some sort of ruling that nobody dreamt of. Anyway, we're now going to the pound coin, another controversy here. Not the Treasury, it will be the Royal Mint. The Royal Mint had the new pound coin, but a lot of machines, a lot of supermarkets don't take it.
Yes, that's a problem when you introduce any new currency.
But it's going to end at the end of this month.
It's only a few days, I think. And then the old coin will be no longer valid. I think you can still take them into banks, and that's important. I mean, yes, there are always difficulties when you change over with a currency, especially when so many things depend on machines. But at least we're better off than you would have been in India a year ago, when they suddenly declared that the notes themselves were no longer valid, and you had all this money, and they said it's useless.
Should we have? Well, actually, there's a 500 million of the old coins still go. Shall we actually count this money and give it to the European Union?
Well, that would be a way of paying everyone off.
I think we'll let them carry it. Well, we thank Michael Binyon OBE very much for actually enlightening us with his wisdom. And that's all what we have this week. احنا طبعا بنشكر الضيف وبنشكركم لحسن المتابعة ونشوفكم الأسبوع الجاي. ما تنسوش تتابعونا على فيسبوك من لندن وعلى تويتر @Adel Darwish 1 ونشوفكم الأسبوع الجاي. يلا.